We are so glad to have you guys back for communication. We're going to talk to you. That's part of communication. The other part,
listen,
yes.
and our body language.
Yeah, we're not Ursula. We're not good at body language. But we want to talk to you, take a little bit of a different
Real quick,
angle.
make sure you got your book
And your workbook.
and, of course, pen, paper, or something to take notes. Remember that you can always pause the videos. You can come back to the videos. This is your resource. So create, write in the margins if you need to. There's sections at the back of every chapter for you to write, branch out ideas. This is really designed as the beginning of a living document for you.
Yeah. Highlighters, Post-its, whatever works for you. Use these documents. Please write all over them. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about communication. Part of why you highlight the book or you write notes in the book is to communicate to the future you what was important to you at this time, to reinforce the important information. This is why when you're hiring somebody, you talk about your values and your educational philosophy at the interview, during the orientation. It's in their handbook. Maybe it's on the wall.
It's also in your parent handbook, in your parent interview.
Yeah.
This is a key component of your relationship with every person who walks in your building.
So you're communicating it over and over again. This is what's important. So when you're using documents like our book or other books that you're reading, highlight things, underline, write in the margins, because you're communicating to the future self. These are the thoughts that came to me. So not always is communication between one person and another. Sometimes it's within yourself. And I think that's an important part as a leader, to do introspection, to think about what might happen.
And let's be honest, some of us we get older and sometimes we forget.
That's true too.
But even more importantly, technology changes.
Absolutely.
And when technology changes, sometimes we lose the notes that we might have put in our computer or in our phone. So in addition to communication, one of the things that I'm going to encourage you to do is to always, maybe not always, but periodically print, backup if you don't automatically print. Because there's a lot of people who create the standard operating procedure guidelines that Carrie and I talk about later in the course, that you should be using literally probably in every one of the sections of the course. But I've seen people never actually physically print them. They'll just send links to students or to new staff or links to new parents. And there's never really a printed document. As somebody who has had to rescue more than one hard drive.
Yes, hard drives happen. Hard drive crashes happen. Believe it or not, cloud drives crash, cloud servers go bankrupt. There's all kinds of things that could happen.
Or you forget, or you're unavailable for a week. I mean, if you're gone for a couple of weeks on vacation, or you get suddenly sick, or someone in your family does, and you just are not available, make things easy for your staff. Make sure that they know where the systems are in place and that you have that. All of that is communication.
Right.
So one of the things that we thought we would actually talk a little bit about today that's not in the book, and we don't really talk about it much on any of our podcasts, is digital communication. And it's becoming more and more the way that you talk to big chunks of your staff and probably the majority of your parents. So Carrie, what are some easy tips that we can help our directors with communicate with their parents?
Well, here's one, and I'm going to advocate a specific software that I hope never goes away because I love it. I grew up with an English teacher as a parent, so I am very conscious of grammar. But even with decades of grammar being crammed into my head, sometimes I mess up. We're all used to spell check. There's a thing called Grammarly, which is basically spell check, but for your grammar. I think it's great. I think if you've got parent communication apps on tablets in classrooms, please have Grammarly plugged in for your teachers. This will make it so much easier for the parents to view them as professionals because they are putting in punctuation and capitalization and using the appropriate word. It really is a lifesaver to your frontline staff to have Grammarly or some software like that, so that it's checking their grammar as well as their spelling. Please do this.
That is a great idea. The other thing that's really, really helpful when it comes to, just your staff not feeling overwhelmed. I mean, our whole goal is that you don't feel overwhelmed, but let's be honest, we don't want our staff to be overwhelmed either. Is creating a whole bunch of literally cut and paste responses for every age group, for every scenario, because you don't want them to send the same thing every single day, which says, hey, your child had a great day today.
Right. And you can have things like insert name, had a great time in the art activity. He's really developing his fine motor skills. And then another one that says insert name, had a great time in the art center. He's really developing his creativity. And then a third one that is XYZ, had a great time in the art center. He's really enjoying working with his friends. So that's 3 different messages that are, this kid had a good time in the art center, but why? Or what was the significance of that? And that way it gives them a leaping off point. And if they're having one of those days, and we've all had those days where you're just like, I can't think of another way to say that this kid is just working my nerve. You've given them examples of, he's having a bit of a challenge keeping his hands to himself, or he's really enjoying rough and tumble play, or she really has an excellent vocabulary, those kinds of things. If we give them a library, basically, of shortcuts, it will make their lives so much easier with that parent communication using the parent communication tool. And then you don't have to be reviewing all of the parent communications. I've talked to a number of directors who are literally reviewing everything that goes out in the parent communication app. And I'm sorry, that is a lousy use of your school's resources. Do not do that.
In other words, you shouldn't be spending your money and your time that way. That is actually a great, if you are trying to figure out why you might need additional support staff, or what would be, I'm gonna use me. Okay. Because we all know, well, maybe you don't all know yet, but you'll figure it out really quick. The grammar is definitely not my thing, and this would be something that would drive me crazy. Yeah, I'd be going, approve all. I would not approve each individual message. That would just drive me crazy. But I would also be like totally horrified if something that went through should not have gone through. But this would be something that if I was hiring an assistant director, I would be looking for somebody who was the grammar Nazi. I'd be looking for somebody with Carrie's type of, they love the red pen and don't ever send them a letter because the chances are they're gonna red pen it.
That's my favorite way that my mom ever broke up with anybody. Different story. Anyway,
I think it's a podcast.
The other thing I want to talk about is when things come up. Where somebody's like, I've got a crisis. And this is where our communication tools are very, very important. So you have a parent who is like, I know I'm supposed to give you 30 days, but I just found out that my mom has a terminal condition and she lives in another state and we need to leave on Tuesday. We have to stop, take a minute and breathe and be like, yeah, our policy says you have to give us X number of days, but yeah, we're going to make an exception because yes, you need to be with your mom. When that happens and we've taken the 5 minutes and we've listened very carefully to what they had to say and we've offered some empathy and we have waived our standard policy for this one specific situation, we have to take that another step. And we have to communicate to the future why we did what we did, and how we'll make a determination if we need to waive it again. Because otherwise, you might end up with internal dialogue in your head going, oh my God, why did I do that? Now every parent's going to think they don't have to give us the notice, blah, 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 blah. And you'll have this internal dialogue that is not supporting your program. But if you take the moment after that parent leaves and you've recollected yourself to write a standard operating procedure saying, if a family member has a close family member who has a terminal diagnosis, and so they want to leave the program without proper notice, we will allow it in this type of situation. So that it's very clear, the reason we did this is because their mom is dying. We're not waiving it for everybody. We're waiving it in a situation like this. That's what I mean by communicating to the future. Because it's going to silence your internal freak out monologue about this is going to cause a huge negative cascading effect. You need to be able to be empathetic to your staff or to your clients when something crazy happens. When you have a staff member who, what's a crazy staff situation? I can't think of one right now.
Well, a similar thing. They're gonna, military, PCS, deployment, and all of a sudden, literally in less than 6 weeks, they have to move halfway across the country, and that's everything. So, you know, that's houses, that's everything. So they may not have time or have the ability to keep a child necessarily in a program for 30 days.
Right.
Because they may have to be in the new location within the next 2 weeks.
Yeah. And if that was the staff, what if their spouse was being deployed and they had been working for you part-time, but now they're going to need full-time hours because their spouse is going to be gone.
Yeah.
Or maybe they were working full-time and now they need to be part-time because they're having to do both parts of parenting their 6 children. So those kinds of things, when that happens,
Or they have to move across the country in 4 weeks and they
Right.
have to pack a house.
so all of those are, types of examples that have happened in programs that we've had. And so write yourself a note about why we waived it and communicate it to yourself and to the other members of your community. Communicate it to your board, communicate it to the leaders at your school. If you think it's something that's going to cause gossip, communicate it to the biggest gossip on staff in an appropriate way where you're protecting confidentiality, and just use the biggest gossip for good. Okay.
I always love it when she does those things. Okay, and then one final thing that you can't forget with communication is if you've made an error and you change your mind on something, that's okay. And it's okay to go back to that client, let them know you've changed your mind, and do the right thing. Even if what you had done was follow the standard operating procedure, and then you realize they have a dying parent. I can't believe I just charged them money to leave, right?
Admit your mistakes. It is one of the best things you can do as a leader.
Yeah.
Admit your mistakes. Your staff, your clients will respect you way more if you admit your mistakes than if you try to cover them up. And they'll find out eventually anyway.
Yeah, just because you say it's standard operating procedure. Yeah, it's not always going to work. So, all right. So the next chapter is going to be Intro to Monkeys. You're going to hear this a lot. You're going to see lots of supplemental information, and come back. We'll see you soon.